As your pastor, I am attuned, or I endeavor to be in tune, to what I consider to be the longing of your soul. When I talk about this, I'm not referring to the personal wants that reflect the creature comforts that we each have. We all have 100 of them, and we'll never satisfy all those. But I'm thinking about what it is that represents uniquely your relationship with God. What is it that represents the strength of the bond that you have with God? Or what is it that represents the gulf that you might feel between where you are and where you believe or feel God to be? And as I try to prayerfully be attuned to what your soul longs for, one of the things that I have heard continuously, and I believe the Spirit has been trying to tell me something here, is that in worship committee meetings and in talking with people throughout Northview Church, I have heard repeatedly how before I came, you had Good Friday services, where as a part of that service, towards the end of it, you were invited to come up and hammer a nail into that cross. Some years that involved writing something on a slip of paper, a sin, a temptation, a burden that you carried. Other years it just involved nailing a nail and visualizing what it was you were hammering there. I have heard this, though, from many people, that this is something that has been significant in your spiritual life here at Northview. And I very much wanted us to be able to do that as a part of the service tonight. And I invite you to consider, first of all, what is it about this activity that speaks so to you at Northview? What does it say about you and your relationship with God? Does it represent part of the strength, that reminder of what keeps you strong? Does it represent some gulf or void that you feel? Or is it a little bit of both? In order to understand what this may be about, we read in the Scriptures and throughout many Christian writers in the early church and throughout the centuries, that in the crucifixion, Jesus had all the sins of the world placed on him, and there they were crucified. What that means depends on how we define sin. And that's a big topic. There are a lot of different ways to look at that. One way that's helpful to distinguish it is to consider how Christian ethicists talk about the distinction between a moral evil and a natural evil. A moral evil is when someone sets fire to his neighbor's house. A natural evil is when a natural disaster, such as a windstorm, destroys someone's home, as we saw earlier today in Franklin County. And for John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, he saw both of these as being examples of sinfulness in the world. Ever since disobedience in the Garden of Eden, the entire world has not been the way God wanted it to be. There are times that you and I commit sinful acts. We do things that cause ourselves harm and other people. There are times that other people do sinful things and it causes us harm. And there are times that sin just happens to us. This is manifested through health problems, through debt, through environmental conditions, through societal problems. Times that something has happened to us and we just can't shake it. When it comes to moral evils and sinfulness that we ourselves are responsible for. Anybody who's ever tried to recover from a serious addiction knows about that. And when it comes to the time that sin just happens to us, anyone with chronic health problems or an abusive relationship with somebody in the family knows about that. This evening, I invite you to consider, what is it that burdens you? What is it that brings you down? What is that you just cannot control? And I invite you to consider that all of those things have been laid on Jesus and nailed to the cross. In a few moments, you are invited to come down and to take a nail and to hammer it into the cross. We will sit here in silence and we will just listen as this goes about. As this happens, I invite you to be in prayer for those who come down and the burden that each person brings to nail to the cross. I invite you to hold in prayer our brothers and sisters who could not be here tonight because of physical health or the weather or other things. I invite you to consider, what is your burden that weighs you down, like Jesus collapsing under the weight of the cross on the pathway up to Golgotha. And realize that through the tragic miracle of Good Friday, whatever that burden is handed over to God and nailed to the cross. I invite you to come as you feel led, and we will remain in silence for as long as everyone is able to do this. Come now.